Most missing person cases are solved relatively quickly, but there are still countless individuals out there who remain unaccounted for months, years, and even decades after they were last seen. In many of these cases, it's possible someone knows something that will help crack the case, but they might not know that they know it. Number 5. Christina Holick disappeared under strange circumstances in 2007. Her case has never been solved. It was August 6, 2007 when Christina was last seen. She had made plans to enjoy the civic holiday with some friends. The group consisted of her cousin, Faith, and 2 young men, Eddie and Joe. All were members of the Youth for Christ group, and Christina was actually a group leader. It was a group of friends she felt safe around. They had originally planned to go to a youth conference in Montreal, but found it would be too expensive, so they settled on camping. The group headed out to Rainbow Falls Provincial Park, arriving on August 5th. The first 6 hours of the trip were spent setting up camp and relaxing before the group decided to take a nap at about 6:30 p.m. They woke up 4 hours later and stayed up late talking and sitting around a campfire. It was 4 a.m. before they decided to turn in for the night. Just 2.5 hours later, Christina woke again. She woke up Eddie and asked if he would accompany her to the central comfort station at the campsite. She apparently didn't want to make the trip alone. This wouldn't have been too strange if it wasn't for what happened next. Christina suggested they jog back to their campsite and decided to take a different route back to Eddie. Eddie headed towards Highway 17 while Christina jogged through the trails. It was the last time anybody saw Christina. She hadn't arrived back by the time Eddie returned, but he didn't think that was too strange. Even when a few hours passed and the other friends woke up, they didn't worry about Christina. They figured she decided to take some time for herself. It was only when it got to 11 a.m. that the friends began to worry. They searched the surrounding area for any sign of Christina before finally reporting her missing 7.5 hours after she vanished. What followed was one of the largest searches in the area's history. Volunteers and professional search and rescue workers searched Rainbow Falls Provincial Park. A number of items were found, but none could be confirmed as belonging to Christina. Search teams also found no evidence of an animal attack, which would have been possible in this area. The police do not suspect foul play, but the possibility hasn't been ruled out either. There's simply not enough evidence to say what really happened that morning. Christina is described as being 5 foot 2 inches tall and weighing 126 pounds when she vanished. She had wavy black hair and brown eyes. She was 20 years old when she went missing. Anybody with information on this case should contact the Ontario Provincial Police at 1-877-934-6363 or 1-705-330-4144. Number 4. Chadwick Carr disappeared while on the phone with his sister in May of 2021. He hasn't been seen or heard from since. Chad was staying at a halfway house in Clinton, Tennessee at the time of his disappearance. 5 months earlier, he had suffered an overdose and vowed to make a difference in his life. He had signed up for a 90-day recovery program, and by May, it was the tail end of the program. Chad's family still lived in Knox County, but Chad spoke to them as often as he could. He talked to his sister Whitney almost every day and posted on social media daily. He thought of himself as a comedian, according to his sister, and was always trying to make people laugh. May 2nd, 2021 was Chad's last post on social media. The 32-year-old was last seen at his home in Clinton. It was about 9:45 p.m. when he was on the phone with his sister. The conversation started normal, and there didn't seem to be anything out of the ordinary going on in Chad's life at the time. At one point, he set the phone down so he could light a cigarette, but he wouldn't pick the phone up again. Whitney could hear people talking in the background, but couldn't make out what they were saying. After a few moments, the call disconnected. She tried to call Chad back, but he didn't answer the phone. The next day, Chad didn't show up for a meeting and didn't turn up to work at the construction site where he was employed. This struck his family as very strange. Even with everything that was going on in his life, his family knew him as a hard worker and not someone that would abandon his job. At one point, someone went to check on Chadwick at his home. They found he wasn't there, but he'd left behind almost all his belongings. They found his cell phone, wallet, and one of the flip-flops he'd been wearing when he vanished. Chad was reported as a missing person not long after, but the police found no clues that could point to what happened to him. There have been some unconfirmed sightings of Chad near North Central Street and Marilia Avenue in Knoxville the day after he vanished, but no other leads. Both the police and Chad's family and friends believe the case will only move forward if someone comes forward with information. Chad is described as 5 foot 9 inches tall and weighing 230 pounds. He was last seen wearing black shorts, a black tank top, and tan flip-flops. Anyone with information can contact Anderson County Sheriff's Office at 865-457-2414. Number 3. A night out on a party bus ended with a creepy disappearance for 23-year-old Bryce Borka. More than 6 months later, the only trace that's been found is a tie that he'd been wearing when he got lost in the woods. Bryce and his friends spent the night of October 29th on a party bus in Eagan, Minnesota. Bryce became heavily intoxicated, and the friends decided to call it a night in the early hours of October 30th. They used the ride-sharing app Lyft to head to the east side of the city. During the drive, Bryce decided to get out of the car while the vehicle was still moving, but his friends managed to keep him under control until they got out at about 2 a.m. They had ridden to Hill Ridge Drive, where one of the friends lived. It was a few miles from Bryce's apartment and would have been a 45-minute walk, but Bryce told friends he was going to walk home. He headed off while the friends went inside. It was a journey Bryce had done many times before. The route was well lit, and even while heavily intoxicated, it shouldn't have been too difficult. But Bryce made a wrong turn early on and ended up walking for 30 minutes in the wrong direction. At 2:34 a.m., one of Bryce's friends received a FaceTime call from him. He was lost in a wooded area and had only 2% battery life on his phone. He told his friend he had no idea where he was or how to get home. Bryce managed to send a pin to his friend before the battery ran out and the call ended. Bryce's friends immediately set out to try to find him. The pin took them to a wooded area between Highway 13 and the Minnesota River. They found no sign of their friend and contacted the police at around 11 a.m. that morning to report him missing. Over the next 2 days, over 250 people took part in searches for Bryce. The terrain was particularly difficult, with some marshy areas and some more rocky areas. Even for searchers walking while sober in broad daylight, it was a difficult task to navigate the area. There were also no lights, even around a railway line that runs through the area. It would have been pitch black when Bryce was walking. Early on in the search, a tie was found which the police believed belonged to Bryce. A Nike shoe was also found, but it didn't match the description of what Bryce was wearing when he vanished. Later searches were also hampered by poor weather, with flooding taking place in the area over the winter. It's possible that what clues might have been there have been washed away. The police were able to uncover CCTV footage from an industrial building not far from where Bryce's phone last pinged. It's not been released to the public, but showed him walking alone. In January, a $30,000 reward for information leading to Bryce was announced, but so far it remains unclaimed. Bryce is described as a white male with blonde hair. He was last seen wearing a white shirt and possibly a cardigan. Anyone with information should contact the Eagan Police Department at 651-675-5827. Number 2. Aaron Gillan was an American citizen living in Vienna, Austria, when he vanished under suspicious circumstances in 2007. The strange case was made all the more confusing by conflicting statements from the police and those who may have seen Aaron last. Aaron had moved to Austria in the early 2000s, falling in love with the country during a year abroad in 1997. He earned a master's degree in theology while in the US and continued his studies while in Austria. At one point, he considered becoming a Roman Catholic priest and attended seminary school, but decided to serve the church in other ways. He was openly gay and didn't believe it would be right to preach against homosexuality. By 2007, Aaron was in a good place in his life. He'd been working for the United Nations Industrial Development Organization for 4.5 years. He had a large apartment in Vienna and he was looking forward to his mother coming to live with him for 6 months after she had sold her house in the US. He had also booked tickets for vacations with his boyfriend, but on October 29th, he vanished without a trace. The last confirmed sighting of Aaron was as he left work at about 6 p.m. that evening. His partner had stayed the night before, but Aaron had dropped him off at the train station before work, so there would have been nobody to notice when he didn't come home. His employer noticed when he didn't show up for work the next day, though. It was very unlike Aaron to not show up without letting someone know, and his coworkers were unable to get a hold of him. When he didn't show up the following day, they believed something was wrong. Aaron's partner and neighbor had also realized he was missing at this point and tried to file a missing person report with the police. They were told that the police didn't need to investigate Aaron's disappearance, as he wasn't an Austrian citizen. Aaron's work contacted his mother, Kathy, in the US to let her know that he was missing, and her search for her son began. At first, police claimed that Aaron had spontaneously decided to take his own life. This was despite nobody noticing any signs of depression. They claimed he had contracted HIV and ended his life in the Danube River, but it soon emerged that Aaron had recently tested negative. Police later claimed there were reports of a man matching Aaron's description floating in the Danube River. They told Kathy they had searched the area where he vanished with scuba teams and sniffer dogs, but it would later emerge this hadn't happened at all. According to Kathy, the police were hostile towards her and dismissive of Aaron's case. Aaron had previously complained about the same police after he was taken into custody for forgetting to have his subway card stamped. He had allegedly been physically attacked, and the police had made homophobic remarks. That incident had been 4 years before he vanished. Kathy later learned that Aaron had been to a sauna after he left work the night that he disappeared. There were reports of a fight at the sauna, started by tourists, and Aaron fled the scene wearing only a towel. All of his belongings were left behind. Some reports stated ambulances had been called to the sauna, while others claimed that no fight had taken place. What exactly happened to Aaron and why remains a mystery, and will likely remain that way unless anybody comes forward with information. According to NAMUS, the Austrian Federal Criminal Police Cold Case Unit is the investigating agency and can be contacted at 431-248-36-985-302. Number 1. Barbara Holick was a German citizen living in New Mexico when she vanished without a trace in 1995. Since then, there have been no clues or even solid theories about what happened to her. Barbara had immigrated to the US in 1989 and eventually settled in New Mexico. She worked at a gallery where she made jewelry and painted pottery, as well as minding the gallery itself. She was described as reliable, so when she didn't show up for work, her employer was concerned. Sonny Spruce, the owner of the gallery, went to Barbara's apartment the first day she didn't show up for work. That was June 26, 1995. He found the door to her duplex apartment unlocked. The apartment itself was neat and tidy, which was how Barbara liked it. There was no sign of the missing woman, though. The next day, Barbara still hadn't shown up for work. At this point, she was reported missing. It was determined that the last time anybody had seen Barbara was June 23rd, the Friday before she was reported missing. She had spent the evening at a bar with friends near the duplex where she lived. She had been drinking but wasn't intoxicated, according to the people who were with her. She left the bar between 10 and 11 p.m. to make the short walk home. It seemed like she had made it home. All of her belongings were found at her apartment, including her car and car keys. Her ID and clothing that she'd been wearing the night she was last seen were also found. Her luggage was stored under her bed, and a roll of banknotes was found on the bedside table. There was no indication she had planned to disappear. Not only was it out of character for Barbara to simply vanish without telling anyone, but she also had a friend visiting from Germany who was due to arrive shortly after she disappeared. She had even bought tickets to go rafting with her friend when he arrived. There was no sign of foul play at the apartment, though, and police found no clues that could give them any kind of theory. A few days later, one clue emerged. A maid had been cleaning out the upstairs apartment after some short-term renters had left. She found a pair of shoes on the sofa, which were confirmed to belong to Barbara. The phone cord in the apartment had been cut, and some bed sheets were missing. The 4 businessmen who'd been staying in the apartment were eventually tracked down but claimed to have not interacted with Barbara during their stay. Unfortunately, the maid cleaned the apartment before the police could investigate, potentially wiping away any clues. Over the years, there have been a number of tips in this strange case, but none have led police to Barbara or her body. If alive, Barbara would be 61 years old today. At the time of her disappearance, she was 5 feet tall and weighed 120 pounds. She had long black hair and brown eyes. Anyone with information can contact the Taos Police Department at 575-758-4656. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.